Hello, everybody. In your modern world history classes, you're going to be learning a lot about different Muslim countries. And to give you kind of a preview or a kind of understanding of the background behind these Muslim countries, I'd like to spend a very brief time talking about the early history of Islam. And in fact, Islam goes back a little less than 1,000 years before the beginning of where your course begins in and around 1450 AD. So we're going to begin with the foundation of Islam, and the beginnings of Islam go back to the Prophet Muhammad, and you can see his dates there, 570 to about 632 AD or CE or Common Era. The Prophet Muhammad was a merchant who lived in the city of Mecca. Mecca was a trading city in the Arabian Peninsula, as you can see from the map on your right. And during his many travels as a merchant, he traveled on caravans. He learned about Christianity and Judaism. Now, at the time, the Arab peoples were pagans. They worshiped many different gods. But Muhammad, through his travels, came to believe that the Arabic god and deity, Allah, who was a sky deity, that had been worshipped for many, many years by the Arabs. He believed that the god Allah was the equivalent to the God of the Jews and the God of the Christians, and that would be Yahweh. And he came to believe that he himself was a messenger from God, that he was inspired by God. And he believed that Jews and Christians had, over the years, distorted the true message of God, and that he, as the messenger of God, was here to set the record straight. And so many of the teachings and the beliefs of Muslims and of Islam are very similar to Christianity and Judaism. In fact, you've heard of the Ten Commandments. Maybe you've been driving into your town and seen people posting pictures of the Ten Commandments on their front lawns. But the Ten Commandments are the moral precepts that are followed by Muslims today. And just to give you an example, the second commandment of the Ten Commandments in the Hebrew Bible states that thou shalt not make an image or an idol, because in ancient times people worshipped many different idols and as gods. And in fact, in Islam, it is forbidden and highly discouraged to make images of animals or plants for fear that that could lead to idolatry. In fact, Muslim places of worship, mosques, are often decorated with abstract designs. On this slide, you can see on the bottom an example of this artwork, very intricate geometric designs, and that because of their fear of trying to maybe promoting idolatry. So the thing about Muhammad, though, was that one reason was that he believed that he was a messenger from God, was that he believed that he had been visited by an angel sent by Allah, the angel Gabriel, or if you are familiar with your New Testament, was the angel that visited Mary and Joseph to announce the birth of Jesus. And Gabriel visited Muhammad numerous times, and in the course of those visits, he dictated to him the words of God. And at some point close to the life of Muhammad, these words of the angel Gabriel that had been dictated to Muhammad were recorded in a book known as the Quran. And the Quran was written in Arabic, and Muslims to this day, if they are to truly study the Quran, must learn Arabic so they can read the Quran in Arabic, the language spoken by the angel directly to Muhammad. At least that's what they believe. Now, Muhammad also, throughout the course of his life, had many sayings and said many words and did many things, and these were recorded in oral traditions. And at a much later date, in some cases many centuries later, or several centuries later, these sayings and stories about the Prophet Muhammad became known as the traditions or the Hadith. And together, the Quran and the Hadith are the basis of Islamic law or Sharia law. And these are the laws that, if for Muslims, if they want to live a good and holy and righteous life, they follow Sharia. They follow the teachings of the Quran, and they also abide by the moral teachings of the Prophet Muhammad, as they are preserved in the Hadith and in the Quran. Now, the religion of Islam does not have priests or ministers, but they do have scholars, because certain individuals who devote their lives to the study of the Quran and the Hadith and are experts in Sharia law, these clerics or lawyers or scholars are known collectively as the ulama, and they are respected in Islamic societies, and often it's the case in Islam on Fridays when Muslims go to pray in their mosque or their place of worship. They will ask a scholar who's a member of the ulama to speak and to discuss the Quran in the form of a sermon, just like a Christian minister might give a sermon in church on Sundays. Now, Muhammad, early in his career, when he was preaching and trying to convert the people of his hometown of Mecca to his new religion, he was not warmly received, and his life was threatened. Mecca was a holy city for pagan Arabs, and there were many idols there where people came to worship, and the local rulers did not want this guy, this Muhammad character, messing up their worship. So he decided, for fear of his life, to leave, and this is known as the hijrah, or flight, and he went north to a neighboring city of Medina, and this was in 622 AD, 622, and that's year 1 of the Muslim calendar. So the reason why this flight is significant is because it marks the beginning of Muhammad's great success, because once he went to Medina, he was able to convert the entire city to his religion, and then from there he was able to convert all of the Arabian Peninsula to his new religion. And the next thing he did, just shortly before his death in 630, he decided to go to war against Mecca, and he was able to conquer the city. And when he conquered the city, he decided to purify it of all of its idols, and there was a sacred stone, a black stone, that was in the city at the place called the Kaaba, which was a stone structure that housed this black stone. And he said from now on that Mecca was the holy city of Muslims, of Islam, and that this black stone, maybe it was a meteorite, we don't know, this black stone was in fact sent by Allah to Abraham, who's in the Old Testament, and his son Ishmael, who Muhammad said was the ancestor of all Arabs. So and he also denounced that from this day on forward that all Muslims, as one of their duties, should try, if they can afford to make a pilgrimage to the city of Mecca and to visit the Kaaba. And to this day, millions and millions of Muslims go to Mecca every year in a pilgrimage. Now, very early in the history of Islam, there was a division, and this division has lasted ever since. And this division is between Sunnis and Shiites, Sunni and Shiite Muslims. Now, Sunni Muslims make up the majority of Muslims are Sunni Muslims, but a significantly large minority of Muslims are Shiite Muslims. So why do we have Muslim and Shiite Muslims, Shiite and Sunni Muslims? Well, it goes back to the very beginning, and it goes back to the issue of who should be the caliph. You see, Muhammad, as long as he lived, was both the political and the religious spiritual leader of all Muslims. And when he died in 632 AD, they had to choose his successor, a man who would be both the spiritual and political leader of all Muslims. And the word for successor is caliph. Now, the first 4 caliphs were elected. The leading Arab tribes got together, their elders at least, and they chose one of their number to be the caliph. Now, the 4th caliph the last caliph to be elected was Ali. Now, Ali was the son-in-law of the Prophet Muhammad, and his wife was Fatima, who's the only child and the daughter of the Prophet Muhammad. And Ali decided that it would be best if his descendants would be hereditary caliphs. Well, this did not sit too well with many, and the Umayyads were a powerful Arab clan based in Mecca who were adamantly opposed to this idea, and so a civil war broke out, and when it was all said and done, Ali was assassinated in 661. Now the Umayyads went ahead and established a hereditary caliphate, and it's called the Umayyad Caliphate. Well, the followers of Ali, henceforth known as the Shiites, which literally means the followers of Ali, they rallied behind Hussein, the son of Ali and Fatima, and in 680 a great battle was fought between Hussein and his supporters against Yazid, who was the leader of the Umayyads and the reigning caliph. And at the Battle of Karbala, the Shiites were defeated and Hussein was murdered. And from that point onward, he was considered by the Shiites to be a revered figure. And to this day, Shiite Muslims go to Karbala, which is currently in Iraq, and there commemorate the death or martyrdom of Hussein. Now, in the centuries that followed, the Shiites revered the descendants of Ali and Fatima, and these descendants were known as imams. Now, it's a little confusing because an imam is also just a generic word for leader of a Muslim community. But for Shiites, the word imam has special meaning. These imams, these are the direct descendants of Ali and Fatima, and Shiites came to believe that these imams have the authority of God. They spoke God's word, and that the word of the imams had the same spiritual authority as the authority of the Prophet Muhammad himself. Now, the 12th and last of these imams was a man by the name of Muhammad al-Mahdi, and he lived about the middle of the 10th century, it's believed, and he disappeared. No one really knows what happened to him, but many Shiites believe that at the end of days, at the end of the world, that this Muhammad al-Mahdi will reappear, and this will mark as the Mahdi, that's his name, the Mahdi, and he will bring about world peace and the triumph of Islam over all of its enemies before the last days and the last judgment of Allah. And now, today, Shiites are a minority, but they're very strong in the modern nation of Iran. In fact, one of the holiest cities of the Shiites is Qom, which is in a center of scholarship for Shiite Muslims. And now over here, I just decided to give you a little picture. This is a coin of Yazid. He was the guy who waged war against Hussein at the Battle of Karbala. Now, one of the stories of Islam in its early history is its vast expansion. Now, to understand the expansion of Islam, you have to understand a very controversial word and concept among Muslims, and that's the idea of jihad. Now, jihad is mentioned by the Prophet Muhammad and in the Quran and in the Hadith, and it literally means struggle. Now, the main focus of jihad or struggle is the individual's effort or struggle to defeat evil in his own soul. That's called the greater jihad. So every good Muslim must obey God's will. In fact, the word Muslim means someone who submits to God's will. And Islam means peace. So the peace that comes from being victorious over evil in your own internal soul and enjoying that internal peace of mind. So the greater jihad is the individual struggle against evil. Now, the lesser jihad is to fight evil in this world, injustice, and also to defend fellow Muslims from attack. Now, Muhammad, as we discussed when he attacked Mecca, was not a pacifist, but he did believe that righteous war or holy war was acceptable if it was done to defend Muslims or to fight against some evil. So when he attacked Mecca, Mecca was where they were practicing idolatry and blaspheming Allah, so it made sense that they attack and defeat Mecca and purify the city. Now, in the years in the decades after Muhammad's death, under the first caliphs, as you can see from the first map on your upper right, the lands of the Arabian tribes were from the Persian to the Red Sea, and they were surrounded by powerful empires. The Sasanian Empire, the Byzantine Empire, these empires had often been at war with each other and were exhausted by decades of war. But they were also hostile to this new power of the United Arab Peoples. So it wasn't long before war broke out. And in these wars, the Arabs were very successful. And under the Umayyad caliphs, we talked about the Umayyads already, they were able to expand an empire that stretched from the Atlantic, they conquered Spain, North Africa, Egypt, much of what is today Iraq, Iran, and deep into Central Asia. Now, eventually, the Umayyad caliphs were succeeded by the Abbasid caliphates. The Abbasids were claimed to be descended from the same clan as the Prophet Muhammad and to be the true caliphs, and their capital was located in Baghdad in Iraq. The Umayyad capital had been in Damascus in Syria. Now, the thing about the Arabs, as they waged war and built up these massive empires, it's important to remember that they did not forcibly make people convert to Islam. But in fact, the Prophet Muhammad explicitly forbid any forcible conversion. So when they conquered the non-Muslim peoples, they allowed them to practice their religion, but they had to pay a poll tax, or jizya. And all non-Muslims, or dhimmis, were required to pay this poll tax. Now, this poll tax was very effective in getting people to convert to Islam, because once you converted to Islam, you didn't have to pay this heavy tax. And so that was an incentive for many people to convert. And plus, once you converted to Islam, you were equal to all other Arabs. The Arabs did not treat non-Arabs as second-class citizens once they converted to Islam. So over time, in the Umayyad and the Abbasid empires, over time, many people converted to Islam to escape, in some cases, just to escape this heavy tax. But it's important to remember that this tax was not the only way that conversion succeeded. There were many groups of people who voluntarily converted to Islam. For example, as the Umayyads and the later Abbasids expanded into Central Asia, many Iranian peoples and Turkish tribes converted to Islam and joined up with the Arabs as warriors. And so they were, in fact, in the case of another group of people, were the Moors and the Berbers of North Africa. Like the Moors gave their name to Morocco in North Africa. The Moors and the Berbers, they converted to Islam and joined the Arabs in the conquest of Spain in the early 8th century. Now, also, another thing to remember about Islam was that this expansion was not always through war and conquest. As we get later into the history of Islam, a lot of the spread of Islam was due to trade, as Arab and other Muslim, Turkish, Indian, Persian merchants, as they traded, they brought their religion with them. For example, in Southeast Asia, as you can see on the map on the upper right-hand corner, as they expanded in Indonesia, many of the local rulers voluntarily converted to Islam, like the ruler or Sultan of Malacca, which is today in Malaysia. And Malaysia, the modern nation of Malaysia, is still predominantly a Muslim country. In fact, Indonesia, which encompasses this whole area you see on the map, is the largest Muslim nation in the world, with over 200 million Muslims living in it. Also, as Arab and Moorish merchants from North Africa, they would cross the Sahara Desert in caravans, and they began to trade with the peoples of Africa in the interior. And there are actually a series of empires that developed across sub-Saharan Africa, and probably the wealthiest and most powerful of them was the Empire of Mali, founded, or not founded, but one of its greatest rulers was Mansa Musa. And you can see what's colored on this map to your right on this map right here. You can see the extent of the empire of Mali. Over another example of how trade led to the expansion of Islam, when Arab and Persian merchants began to trade in East Africa, looking for gold and slaves and salt, they established ports such as Mogadishu and Kilwa in what is today places like Tanzania. And in these areas, they intermarried with the native Africans, and a new language developed. It's a mixture of the indigenous African languages and Persian and Arabic, and it's called Swahili. So there are actually a number of different Swahili sultanates or Swahili city-states that were located along the east coast of Africa that arose and were a direct response of directly related to the expansion of Islam and the development of these trading patterns. So now that we're close to around the year 1300, 1400, we've kind of got close to where you're going to start your class in 1450 and start to look at the history of various Muslim states in the modern era.